All right, so today we're going to do a deep dive into something that, as global health epidemiologists, you're all deeply familiar with,
Yeah.
HPV vaccination.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a fascinating new article by Reda Sadki called New Ways to Learn and Lead HPV Vaccination, Brilliant Planning and Implementation Gaps.
Yeah, it's a really interesting piece.
And we'll also be pulling in some real-world stories from health workers facing these challenges head-on.
Yeah, so we can kind of see how these ideas are actually playing out.
Exactly. So get ready for some aha moments.
Absolutely.
So one thing that really struck me about Sadki's approach
Mm-hmm.
is how he kind of moves away from that typical top-down strategy, like handing down directives from on high.
Exactly.
And instead, he focuses on the collective wisdom of over 16,000 global health workers.
Yeah, through the Geneva Learning Foundation's Teach to Reach program.
Yeah, so it's a crowdsourcing solutions from the very people who are actually out there implementing these programs.
And then seeing what actually works on the ground.
Yeah, right. And Sadki highlights this 5-step process that TGLF uses to kind of generate this peer knowledge.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating model.
So let's kind of break that down a little bit.
Okay, sounds good.
So the first step involves gathering just this massive amount of on-the-ground experiences from health workers worldwide.
Right, it's all about capturing the richness and complexity of real-world implementation.
Yeah, you need to understand the challenges before you can even start to think about finding solutions.
Exactly.
So then what happens in step 2?
So in step 2, TGLF takes all those experiences and analyzes them.
Okay.
They're looking for patterns, recurring challenges, and most importantly, innovative solutions that have emerged from the field.
So essentially mining those experiences for those little golden nuggets of insight.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and then step 3.
Step 3 is where they do a deep dive into specific case studies and implementation stories.
Oh, interesting.
So it's not just about identifying what worked or what didn't, but really trying to understand the why behind it.
So it's almost like a forensic investigation
I like that analogy.
into successful HPV vaccination programs.
Yeah,
So you're really trying to get to the root of what made them successful.
absolutely.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. I think step 4 is where they bring in the national EPI planners.
The people who are actually responsible for shaping vaccination policies.
Right. So you're finally bridging that gap between the frontline experience and the people who are actually creating the policy.
Exactly, that's the key.
And then finally, step 5.
Step 5 focuses on knowledge mobilization.
Okay.
So TGLF takes all those learnings, synthesizes them, and then shares practical guidance back to the frontline workers.
So it creates that continuous learning cycle.
Exactly. It's not a one-off thing.
Right. It's a dynamic system that evolves based on real-world feedback.
Precisely.
So one of the things that I found really fascinating about this whole process is some of the surprising findings that emerged.
Yeah, there were definitely some things that challenged conventional wisdom about HPV vaccination.
Like, for instance, the idea that tribal communities often show less vaccine hesitancy than urban areas.
Right. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, you would think it would be the other way around.
You would think.
But TGLF suggests that this could be due to stronger community ties and trust in traditional leaders.
Factors that are often less prominent in more individualistic urban settings.
So it really highlights the importance of not making assumptions.
Absolutely. You need to understand the nuances of each community.
Right. And another finding that I thought was really intriguing was the influence of teachers,
Oh, yeah.
which sometimes even exceeded that of health workers.
It's true.
Now, why would that be?
Well, think about it. Teachers have this consistent contact with students and their families, and they're often seen as trusted figures.
Yeah, especially when it comes to children's well-being.
Exactly. And TGLF found that in some communities, a recommendation from a teacher carried more weight than one from a less familiar health worker.
So it really speaks to the importance of building partnerships beyond just the health sector.
Absolutely. Schools can be incredible allies in promoting vaccination.
Now, here's a finding that might seem obvious, but I think it's often overlooked.
Okay.
Simple communication often trumps complex strategy.
Yeah, especially when you're dealing with sensitive topics like sexual health.
So you mean cutting through the jargon
Exactly.
and getting straight to the point? And there's a quote from a health worker in the TGLF report that I thought just perfectly encapsulated this.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
They said, "We stopped using complicated medical terms and started talking about protecting daughters from cancer. That's when we saw a real shift."
Wow, that's powerful.
It's about connecting with people on an emotional level, using language that they understand.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about mothers and daughters.
Right.
Sadki also emphasizes the importance of engaging male community leaders.
Yeah, we often frame HPV vaccination as a women's health issue, which it is in terms of direct beneficiaries.
Right.
But we can't neglect the role of men.
Because they influence the decisions.
Exactly. Engaging fathers, husbands, brothers. It can shift social norms and create a more supportive environment for vaccination.
And there's a great quote from a community leader in Pakistan who said, "When men understand this vaccine prevents suffering for their wives and daughters, they become the strongest advocates."
That's so true.
Powerful testimony.
It is.
And it really highlights the importance of tailoring our messaging to the specific concerns of each community. Okay, so here's another surprising finding.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Religious institutions can be powerful allies.
Really?
Now, that might seem counterintuitive.
Yeah, given the sensitivities surrounding sexual health.
Exactly. But Sadki points out that many religious leaders prioritize their community's well-being. And when they're presented with the facts and the potential to prevent suffering, many of them actually become very vocal supporters of vaccination.
Oh, that's fascinating.
So it's about building bridges and finding common ground. And Sadki also mentions the impact of health workers vaccinating their own children.
Oh, yeah. That's a really powerful message.
It's a testament to their belief in the vaccine's safety and effectiveness. And leading by example can be incredibly persuasive.
Especially in communities where trust in the healthcare system might be lower.
Exactly. So it's not just about conveying information, it's about demonstrating conviction.
I agree.
So it's a lot to unpack, but I think some of the key takeaways from all of this are that continuous learning is crucial.
Yes, definitely.
This is not a one-and-done situation.
Right.
It's about constantly adapting and improving based on new data and new experiences. And that requires fostering a culture of learning within our organizations and our communities.
Absolutely.
It's about openly sharing experiences, both successes and failures.
Yeah, creating a safe space for learning.
Where people feel comfortable sharing without fear of judgment.
Exactly.
Another critical takeaway is the need to motivate health workers.
Oh, absolutely.
They are on the front lines. They are facing challenges every single day. And we need to value their expertise. And provide them with the support they need to do their jobs effectively.
And we need to equip them to handle difficult conversations.
Oh, that's so important.
Yeah.
HPV vaccination can be a very sensitive topic.
It can be.
And they need the skills to address concerns with compassion and accurate information.
And Sadki talks about empowering health workers to navigate the human terrain of vaccination. It's not just about the science. It's about understanding the social and cultural factors that influence acceptance.
So we need to equip them with the tools to navigate those complexities.
Absolutely.
Sadki also discusses some surprising system-level factors that contribute to success in HPV vaccination programs.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, one thing that he points out is that success is often independent of resource levels.
Really?
You don't necessarily need massive funding or fancy technology to create an impactful program.
So what is the secret ingredient then?
Well, Sadki argues it's a combination of strong leadership, a clear vision, and a commitment to continuous learning. But perhaps most importantly, it's about the ability to mobilize the community and build trust.
That's so crucial.
It's about harnessing the power of community ownership.
Absolutely.
And he also mentions the importance of informal networks.
Oh, yeah.
Those relationships and connections that exist outside of formal structures. They could be incredibly influential.
They can.
In spreading information and mobilizing support.
And that often challenges our traditional top-down approach to public health. Sadki suggests that those bottom-up strategies, the ones that come from the community itself, are often more effective and sustainable.
Because they're grounded in the community's lived experiences.
Exactly. They resonate more deeply.
And that aligns with another point that Sadki makes, that social factors are often more influential than technical ones.
That's true.
It's not just about having the right vaccines. It's about understanding the social norms, the beliefs, the economic realities that shape health behavior.
It's about seeing the whole picture.
Exactly.
Not just the medical aspect.
And finally, Sadki emphasizes the need for local adaptation over standardization.
Right.
We can't just take a one-size-fits-all approach to vaccination programs.
No, we need to be flexible.
Right.
Adapting our strategies to the unique needs and challenges of each community.
So context is king.
Absolutely. It's about empowering communities to find solutions that work for them, rather than imposing prepackaged solutions from the outside.
I think that's a really important point.
It is.
So it's a lot to digest.
It is.
But I think the core message is very clear.
What's that?
Successful HPV vaccination hinges on empowering communities, building trust, and embracing continuous learning.
And remembering that those closest to the problem often have the best solutions.
Absolutely. Now, as we move into the next part of our deep dive, I'd like you to consider this.
Yep.
If we apply these principles to other global health challenges, what could we achieve?
That's a good question.
What new possibilities might emerge?
Yeah, that's something to think about.
Yeah. That is a thought-provoking question.
It is.
And it's a perfect segue into the next part of our deep dive,
Okay.
where we can actually look at some concrete examples of how these insights are being translated into action.
I'm really curious about that.
Yeah.
How are these principles actually playing out in the field?
Right.
For instance, Sadki mentions using cancer survivors as advocates,
Oh, yeah.
which seems incredibly powerful.
It is, imagine the impact of a cervical cancer survivor,
Wow.
sharing their story, emphasizing how vaccination could have prevented their suffering. That personal connection can resonate far more deeply than any statistic or lecture.
Absolutely. It makes the consequences of inaction much more tangible.
And much more real.
Yeah.
And these survivors often become very passionate advocates.
You know, educating others, urging them to protect themselves and their loved ones.
A real testament to the human spirit.
It is.
Turning personal tragedy into a force for good.
Absolutely.
Another example that I thought was really powerful was the use of WhatsApp groups
Oh, yeah.
to connect community health workers.
That's brilliant.
This readily available technology allows for quick information sharing, coordination, dissemination of best practices.
Especially valuable in areas with limited access to reliable internet or formal training opportunities.
Exactly. It creates a virtual community of practice,
Yeah.
enabling health workers to connect, ask questions, share challenges, learn from each other.
That's peer-to-peer learning at its best.
It is, Sadki also talked about engaging school children as messengers.
Oh, yeah.
Which I thought was a really interesting concept.
It is. Children can be very receptive to new information, and they have a surprising influence on their families.
They do.
You know, they can spark those conversations about HPV vaccination at home. Conversations that adults might struggle to initiate.
And it really empowers children
It does.
to take an active role in protecting their own health
Yes.
and the health of their community.
And tapping into their natural enthusiasm and desire to make a difference.
It's a really smart strategy.
It is.
Sadki's article also highlights the success of integrating HPV vaccination with existing women's groups.
Oh, yeah. That's a great idea.
These groups already have established networks and trusted relationships within their communities.
So you're leveraging those pre-existing social structures.
Exactly. It provides a ready-made platform for education and outreach, and it allows those conversations about HPV vaccination to happen in a safe and supportive environment.
Which is especially important in cultures where openly discussing sexual health can be taboo.
Yes, absolutely. And I remember reading about a program in rural India that successfully integrated HPV vaccination into existing self-help groups for women. And the trust and rapport that was already present within those groups really facilitated open dialogue about the vaccine's benefits.
That's a great example of how leveraging existing structures can lead to greater success.
It is. Sadki also discusses the potential of partnering with religious institutions.
Yeah.
Now, this, of course, requires a very delicate approach.
It does.
But when it's done respectfully and thoughtfully, it can be incredibly effective.
Why is that?
Well, because you're aligning the message of vaccination with existing values and beliefs.
Right. It makes vaccination more acceptable to those who might otherwise be hesitant. And many religious leaders are deeply concerned about the well-being of their communities.
Yes.
And see vaccination as a way to protect their followers.
So again, it's about finding common ground and building bridges.
Exactly.
Sadki also mentions the impact of community theater and storytelling as ways to convey the importance of HPV vaccination.
Those creative approaches can be very effective. They make the information more engaging and memorable. And they tap into the power of narrative to shape understanding.
Especially in cultures where oral traditions are strong.
That's true.
I recall a program in West Africa that used traditional storytelling methods
Oh, wow.
to communicate the benefits of HPV vaccination.
Interesting.
And it resonated deeply with the community
Really?
and led to a significant increase in uptake.
That's amazing.
So these examples really demonstrate the power of creative thinking
Yeah.
and local adaptation. It's not about imposing a one-size-fits-all approach,
Right.
but about finding solutions that resonate with the specific community you're working with.
Absolutely.
It's about empowering communities to take ownership of their health.
I agree.
And Sadki also highlights some of those counterintuitive success factors.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, for instance, he found that less formal settings often produce better results
Really?
than more formal ones.
That's interesting.
It might seem counterintuitive, but it makes sense when you consider the power of informal networks and trusted relationships.
Right.
People might be more receptive to information when it comes from someone they already know and trust, rather than from a figure of authority in a clinical setting.
Makes sense.
So it's about meeting people where they are, creating a space where they feel comfortable asking questions and sharing their concerns.
Right.
Another surprising finding is that simple communication strategies often outperform complex ones.
Yeah. Keep it simple.
It's about cutting through the jargon
Right.
and delivering the message in a way that people can easily understand.
Just focus on the core message. HPV vaccination is important, and it can protect you from a potentially deadly disease.
Clarity and conciseness are key.
Absolutely.
And then there's the finding that male community leaders can be powerful advocates for HPV vaccination.
Oh, yeah. We talked about that earlier.
Their voices carry weight,
They do.
and they can influence social norms.
And their involvement helps to normalize the conversation and encourage other men to support vaccination.
And religious institutions, too, can play a surprisingly influential role.
Yes, their moral authority and community networks can make them very powerful allies.
It's about recognizing the influence of these institutions
Yeah,
and working with them to promote health and well-being.
absolutely.
So I think all of these findings really challenge us to think outside the box
They do.
and consider unconventional approaches.
And to recognize the importance of social and cultural factors in shaping health behavior.
Right, it's not just about the science.
It's not.
It's about understanding the human element.
Exactly.
And Sadki also emphasizes the power of personal stories
Oh,
in
yeah.
influencing attitudes and behaviors.
Stories can be incredibly persuasive,
They can.
especially when they come from trusted sources within the community.
Right.
Think about the impact of hearing a health worker share their own experience of getting vaccinated,
Right.
or seeing a community leader publicly endorse vaccination.
Those actions speak volumes.
They do. It's about building trust, demonstrating a genuine commitment to the well-being of the community, and walking the walk.
Right. And finally, Sadki stresses the importance of community dialogue over expert presentations.
Yeah. Get people involved.
It's about creating a space for two-way communication,
Right.
where people feel heard, respected, and empowered to ask questions and share their perspectives.
It's a shift from expert knows best to shared learning and collaborative problem solving.
So this approach is really about harnessing the collective wisdom of the community.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that change takes time, patience, and a willingness to learn and adapt along the way.
It's a journey, not a destination,
Well said.
and a journey that we must undertake together if we want to create a healthier, more equitable world.
I agree.
So what are your thoughts on how all of this translates to global health epidemiologists like ourselves?
Yeah, it really makes you reconsider what our role is, in public health.
It does.
It's not just about crunching numbers and analyzing data.
It's about facilitating change and empowering communities.
And Sadki's research really highlights how this approach not only boosts vaccination efforts, but it also strengthens health systems as a whole.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So it's about more than just increasing HPV vaccination rates.
Absolutely. We're talking about building capacity, fostering resilience,
Okay.
creating a more responsive and effective public health infrastructure.
How does that happen?
Well, by tapping into that collective intelligence of frontline health workers,
Yeah.
you're essentially gaining access to real-time feedback on what's working, what's not, and where the gaps are.
So it's like having a network of eyes and ears on the ground,
Exactly.
providing constant insights.
And that information is invaluable.
Yeah.
It can be used to inform policy decisions, refine strategies, allocate resources more effectively.
It's that continuous loop of learning and improvement that we keep coming back to.
It is.
And it's driven by the people who are closest to the action.
Exactly. And by empowering those individuals.
By giving them a voice in the process, you create a more engaged and motivated workforce.
They feel valued.
They do.
Respected and invested in the program's success.
It's about fostering ownership and accountability,
which ultimately translates into better results.
It does.
Sadki's research also emphasizes the importance of challenging our assumptions.
Yes.
And being open to unexpected solutions.
We can get so caught up in our own ways of thinking.
Yeah, we do.
Assuming we have all the answers.
Right. But as we've seen, some of the most effective solutions come from those who are closest to the problem.
Absolutely.
The health workers, the community leaders, the families who are directly impacted.
They have a different lens, a different perspective on the challenges and the opportunities.
And they often possess the creativity and the ingenuity to develop solutions that we might never have considered.
It's true.
So it's about being humble, curious, and willing to learn from those who have different experiences.
Embracing diversity.
Yeah.
Not just in demographics.
But in perspectives, experiences, and ways of knowing.
Fostering inclusivity and recognizing that everyone has something valuable to contribute.
I agree.
This whole conversation is really making me rethink what it means to be a global health epidemiologist.
Yeah.
It's not enough to simply collect and analyze data.
Right.
We need to be actively involved in knowledge translation, community empowerment.
I completely agree.
We need to be facilitators, connectors.
Advocates for change.
We should be using our expertise to amplify the voices of those who are often marginalized.
Yes.
Bridging that gap between research and real-world application.
We need to be champions for community-driven solutions.
Yes.
And for a more equitable and just health system.
It's definitely a challenging role.
It is.
But also incredibly rewarding.
It requires us to step outside our comfort zones,
Yeah.
build relationships, and be willing to relinquish control.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Sadki's work and the lessons from the Teach to Reach program, I want to leave you with this question. How can you, as global health epidemiologists, apply these principles in your own work?
It's about fostering that culture of continuous learning within your organization and finding ways to genuinely engage with communities, empowering them to craft their own solutions.
And using your expertise and influence to advocate for positive change.
Absolutely.
Ultimately striving for a more equitable and healthier world for everyone.
These are the questions that should guide us.
They should.
As we navigate the complexities of global health in the 21st century.
And by embracing these principles of community engagement, trust building, and continuous learning, I truly believe we can create a healthier, more sustainable future for everyone.
I agree.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it insightful and thought-provoking.